This part of Chapter 4 will explore the environmental factors that influence microbial growth, specifically temperature. Out of the major conditions that can influence bacterial growth, temperature, atmospheric oxygen, pH, and water availability, probably the most obvious one is temperature. Each species of bacteria has a defined growth temperature range. A range of growth temperature refers to the highest or maximum temperature at which the bacterial population can grow, and the lowest or minimum temperature at which it can grow. Somewhere within this growth range, there is an optimum temperature. The optimum temperature is the temperature at which the organism grows at its best, is the temperature at which the generation time is the shortest. This is a representation of a growth curve. Notice that on one end of the curve, we have the minimum temperature at which the bacterial population can grow. At the other end, we have the maximum temperature at which the bacterial population can grow. Somewhere within this range, there is the optimum temperature, or the temperature at which the growth rate is at its highest or fastest for that particular population. Also notice that at the minimum range end of the curve, the minimum range curve has a much more gentler slope than the slope at the maximum end of the temperature range. Also notice that the curve is sloped, meaning that the optimum temperature or the peak of the curve is closer to the maximum temperature of growth than to the minimum temperature. Between the optimum growth temperature and the minimum growth temperature, there are a larger range of temperatures than between the optimum temperature and the maximum temperature. What this is essentially showing is that high temperatures quickly and sharply slow down the growth of an organism. Temperatures above the optimum range quickly and sharply slow down the growth of the organism. In order to understand the curve, we need to look at the effects of temperature on growth of organisms. Remember that cells are made of macromolecules: proteins, carbohydrates, lipids, and nucleic acids. Out of those four categories of macromolecules, proteins are probably the most sensitive to environmental conditions. Remember that proteins can be denatured by high temperatures. So high temperatures damage proteins. Lipids can also be damaged by extreme temperatures. At low temperatures, the lipid membranes become rigid and fragile. At high temperatures, the membranes become too fluid and may not be able to contain the cell or its organelles. Because proteins can be quickly damaged if the temperature increases above optimum temperature, growth curves are tilted towards the high temperature range. Microbiologists utilize specific terms to describe the temperature requirement for the growth of specific organisms. As we go through these terms, we'll point out the temperature range of that particular group of organisms and any other characteristics. We'll start with the saprophytes. Saprophytes are cold-loving organisms which temperature range hovers between 5 degrees centigrade and 15 degrees centigrade. Remember that in degrees centigrade, water freezes at 0 degrees centigrade, and room temperature is at around 25 degrees centigrade. So saprophytes need colder temperatures, again hovering between -5 degrees centigrade and about 15 degrees centigrade, with an optimum temperature at around 10 degrees centigrade. On the other hand, take a look at the psychotrophs. Psychotrophs have a wide growth temperature range, hovering between -5 degrees centigrade all the way to about 35 degrees centigrade. Again, to give you an idea, water freezes at 0 degrees centigrade. Room temperature is at around 25 degrees centigrade. Psychotrophs can survive between 4 and 6 degrees centigrade, which is refrigerator temperature. These are the types of organisms that survive and spoil refrigerator foods. The optimum temperature of saprophytes is around 27 degrees centigrade, which is a little warmer than room temperature, which is typically 25 degrees centigrade. So these organisms prefer room temperature, but they can survive refrigerator temperatures and can spoil refrigerated foods. The next group is probably the most important in medical microbiology. These are the mesophiles. The mesophiles have a minimum growth temperature around 15 degrees centigrade and a maximum growth temperature of around 45 degrees centigrade. Now, human body temperature is 37 degrees centigrade. Look at the optimum temperature of these organisms falling right around 37 degrees centigrade. So the optimum temperature for mesophiles is 37 degrees centigrade or human body temperature. These organisms cannot survive the refrigerator, which has 4 to 6 degrees centigrade, too low a temperature for mesophiles. However, they can live at room temperature, and body temperature is the ideal environment for these organisms. All pathogenic and opportunistic pathogenic organisms are mesophiles. The next group are the thermophiles. The thermophiles have a high temperature range with the minimum temperature at around 40 degrees centigrade and a maximum temperature of about 80 degrees centigrade. The optimum temperature hovers around 65 to 70 degrees centigrade. Thermophiles are organisms found in hot springs, or they can also be found in our hot water pipes. The last group are the extreme thermophiles. These organisms are rare organisms found in environments like sulfur springs or hot springs. Look at the temperature range. The minimum temperature required for these organisms' growth is about 75 degrees centigrade, with a maximum temperature above 110 degrees centigrade. Remember that in degrees centigrade, water boils at 100 degrees centigrade, which is around the optimum temperature for these kinds of organisms. So these kinds of organisms like extreme heat, not only like it, but require extreme heat for survival. Again, these are very rare organisms that can be found living in extreme conditions like sulfur springs. We use temperature to preserve foods. We use low temperatures, like refrigeration temperatures, to slow down the spoilage of foods. The only organisms that can grow and in the refrigerator temperatures will be the saprophytes and the psychotrophs. Freezing also preserves food, but it is not effective at killing microbes. Freezing may slow down or stop the growth of an organism. However, as soon as the temperature rises again, the organism will come back to being metabolically active. Low temperatures seldom kill organisms. Low temperatures slow down the growth of the organism. Growth temperature range can only also influence the parts of the body that a pathogenic organism may infect. For example, Mycobacterium leprosy prefers a slightly lower temperature than most mesophiles. So leprosy typically appears in parts of the body that are coolest, like ears, hands, feet, or fingers. You should now be able to answer the following questions. You should be able to know the terms used to describe temperature growth requirements of bacteria. What type of microorganisms will spoil food in a refrigerator? What type of microorganism, given the temperature and salt tolerance characteristics, would you expect to colonize a ham left in the kitchen counter at room temperature?